For more on the political ramifications of all this, I'm joined now by Eugene Robinson, Washington Post columnist and NBC News political analyst, and Noah Rothman, senior writer for the National Review. Noah is in the room with me, so you get the first dibs on this. So unlike what we saw in Kansas, this is an anti-abortion referendum here, but as Ali and I were discussing, some of the proponents of it don't really want to say what it's about. I mean, first of all, do you agree with the stipulation that this is about abortion? And what is the way in which this issue is even being discussed tell you about where the energy is on it?
I'm frankly rather confused by the reading of the subtext. As a proxy for a subsequent vote on abortion, it's about abortion. Mm-hmm. The question itself is about amending the Constitution, which has a low threshold, a simple majority threshold. Is a elementary civic education would suggest that maybe we should make that a little bit higher. Mm-hmm. If I were inclined not to test the waters on abortion, I would emphasize the civic nature of this referendum. Republicans seem desperate to take the temperature of the electorate at the state level and the national level on abortion. They've done so several opportunities, and they've gotten the same consistent answer. It seems as though there's something of a contest, especially on the presidential level, to test whether or not there should be a national federal standard or to leave it to the states, whereas you say, OK, let's just leave it to the states. I have my personal preferences. I have my moral convictions, but this should be a state level issue. The states are not participating in that conversation very much. They're sending, even in dark red states, Kansas, Ohio, they're sending a very clear message to Republicans that that answer is not going to be the one they want, which leads you to conclude that maybe the presidential level is going to decide, based on a sort of a back and forth of the course of this campaign, that a federal standard is necessary. And is that going to be a winning issue? It doesn't suggest that there will be, but at least there will be a uniform line that Republicans can get behind. Right now, they're at odds with each other.
Putting my Congress hat on for a second here, I mean, a federal standard seems just almost impossible to ever get through both chambers, but that's a story for another time. Eugene, the idea of a 60% referendum question, setting aside Noah's points about, you know, the Constitution should potentially have a higher bar. It seems kind of anti-small d democratic to say, look, the majority, a significant majority of voters might agree on this issue, but we're going to tell them, no, that's not how this is going to go. What do you make of the idea of a referendum on this issue and the fact that Republicans are calling for it? What does that say about the potency of the effort to protect reproductive rights in this way?
Look, in a vacuum, you could argue that, you know, you should need 60% to change the Constitution. In a vacuum. This is not in a vacuum. This is a referendum that was rushed. It was rushed through in order to make it harder for the referendum that's on the ballot in November to pass, because it looks like it's going to pass. I mean, the polls show that 57% or so of Ohioans, the last poll I saw, said that they would vote in favor of enshrining abortion rights in the Ohio state constitution. So it's so transparent what Republicans are doing here that I think it offends sensibilities even of people who might, you know, might be otherwise willing to accept some sort of restrictions on abortion or whatever. I think it's just gotten under people's skin and bothers people that this is being done in such a transparent way.
No, I feel like the abortion issue always tends to politically cut against the party that seems to be overreaching on it, right? The party who seems sort of the most extreme on this. How do Republicans, who have won the most recent political fight on this in the sense that the Dobbs decision kind of gave them what they've said they wanted, get to a place where their language can match what the country seems to say they want?
That's a very good question, because it's hard to tell what the country does seem to want. I think the issue does cut against the party that appears to be going against what was the status quo, or at least the status quo ante, the reforming party, which is actually usually the case when it comes to healthcare and healthcare-related issues. When it comes to the actual issue, up or down referendum on abortion, 6 weeks, 15 weeks, what have you, the issue cuts against Republicans. It is complicated in the 2022 elections because so much of this issue was clouded by individual candidates who also backed the 2020 election conspiracies. That was also the case in a Wisconsin, I believe, Supreme Court election late last year that many commentators said turned on the issue of abortion, but the candidate himself was tainted by his association with the 2020 method.
So we can't get a clean read on it.
It's very difficult to cut these two issues apart and analyze them separately. I do think, however, the referendum issues tend to suggest that Republicans should be leaning into a status quo that is, polls suggest Americans prefer, which is no restrictions, on, or no, legal up to the first trimester, 15 weeks, 14 weeks afterwards, restrictions. That's safer ground for them. There's an internal conversation going on within the GOP over whether that's a moral position, much less a political winner.
Eugene, if we had the 2024 election today, I'm of the view that we'd basically be talking about a referendum on Donald Trump again, just given the way that he has dominated the coverage so much across the last 6 months of our political life. But abortion has to be the #1 issue, right? Remember issues that is animating voters in this race right now. Do you think that's the case, or is the economic issue faded in such a way that abortion still remains that issue, or am I misreading that?
Well, I think it depends on what voters you're talking about. I think certainly for a lot of the Democratic coalition, especially young voters, I think abortion is a really important issue. And I think it drives people out to the polls. It drives people to vote. And that's why Democratic officials and candidates keep talking about it, because it is a motivating factor. I think there are other voters for whom, the economy, inflation might be overriding issues, that a lot of people are going to think about different things. But I think it's a very important issue for some important Democratic voters who need to show up for the party to do well.
No, Ron DeSantis, I think, agrees with my theory here a little bit about the way this election is shaping up right now. I want to play some of what he told my colleague Dasha Burns about the state of the Republican primary field right now. Listen to this.
If the election is a referendum on Joe Biden's policies and the failures that we've seen, and we are presenting a positive vision for the future, we will win the presidency and we will have a chance to turn the country around. If, on the other hand, the election is not about January 20th, 2025, but January 6th, 2021, or what document was left by the toilet at Mar-a-Lago, if it's a referendum on that, we are going to lose.
Donald Trump looks at this politically in the short term, right? He wants to win the primary right now. That's what he's focused on. But should the Republican Party be thinking more about what Ron DeSantis is saying here, and the idea that sort of the Trump grievance machine might work in a primary but struggles in a general election?
I mean, certainly, yes. That would be an instinct towards self-preservation that we have not seen so far from the Republican electorate. There does seem to be an element of schadenfreude or even catharsis that Republican voters get from elevating Donald Trump and sticking it to the people who say that they shouldn't. If Republican candidates believe that they cannot win this nomination without ratifying his 2020 grievances, without fundamentally arguing that he's the incumbent, they're going to lose anyway.
Right.
There was no pathway for them. So the Republican candidates like Ron DeSantis and others who are testing out this message, maybe it's too early in the primary. Maybe you wanted to hit it later so that it hits harder. I actually don't think that's true. But at root, there's a distinction here between trying to ingratiate yourself with the Republican electorate and trying to convince them that you are the candidate who can actually deliver for them. And that has to begin with saying Donald Trump lost. He lost fair and square. All his efforts in the courts to try to prove his assertions here were flawed and failed. It's a deprogramming effort that has to begin now, because it's not going to take hold over the course of a week or even a month.
Right. The longer you wait, the harder it is to put that permission structure in place. Eugene, it seems like a good place to do that would be at the debate. We now have 8 Republicans who we believe have qualified for this debate, a few others on the outside looking in. Mike Pence is the most recent to make the stage. Our graphic has Donald Trump on it, but we don't think he's coming. The debates matter in some cycles more than they do in others. As this kind of moves to center stage in the next 2 weeks, how much do you see this debate, whether Trump goes or not, mattering in this cycle?
Well, I think it's a big moment for Ron DeSantis, a big moment for Mike Pence. For those candidates, each of them, aside from Trump, is going to want to appear and sound like the alternative to Donald Trump, like the person that Republicans want to rally around and to try to win the next election. And so it's a very important moment for them. We don't know if Trump is going to be there. I kind of doubt that he will. For DeSantis in particular, DeSantis has had a rough period. He's just today, I guess, fired his campaign manager and got a new one. So I guess it's yet another reset. His poll numbers have just gone in the wrong direction, and so of course there is time left. But you need to start going in the right direction at some point if you hope to win the nomination. So I think it's a particularly big moment for him.
Some high-level politics here. A summer of process stories is not going to make you the president. Noah and Eugene, thank you both for your analysis. We got to leave it there.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.